Hello and welcome to episode number 48 of the Hobbies and Happiness podcast, where we talk all about the hobby that makes us happy, tabletop gaming. I'm one of your hosts, Dan.
And I'm Jim, and today we're going over tournament preparation.
All right. So this week we want to talk about a little something different. I don't really think we've kind of dove into this topic yet.
No.
On the podcast. And honestly, we haven't really had any real reason to.
Yeah.
Basically what we're doing is we're getting ready for a tournament. Probably a few.
Yeah.
Probably a few. So we kind of wanted to kind of give some tips into how we think you should go about doing some tournament prep, and then kind of do a little bit kind of in real time.
Yeah.
So before we get into it, thanks everybody for watching. We appreciate you. Thanks everybody for being here. Again, if you're watching us on YouTube and not following us on any of the other social media platforms, head over to our website, www.hobbiesandhappiness.com. That'll take you to pretty much all of our social platforms: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, pretty much all of them you can find at our website. And then also you can, instead of watching, you can listen to the podcast as well. We're on all of the podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. You can check us out there. And then if you're listening, you can watch us as well over on YouTube. So if you aren't following us on the other platforms, why don't you head over there and do that as well. We appreciate everybody who's listening and taking part, and you guys are making it worth it. Thank you very much. So, all right, we're going to jump right in. So, all right. I think we found out about this tournament through Avi, right?
Yeah.
So about a week ago, I think it was about a week ago, one of our friends from our community, Avi, hit us up and told us about a local Magic Modern tournament. So yeah, it's Magic the Gathering. If you're not familiar, and we've touched on this in past episodes about the different formats, right? So this is a modern format. Modern. All right, what cards are legal in Modern? Goes all the way back to
all the way back to 8th edition.
8th edition,
which I want to say like 2010, something along those lines.
Okay, I'm gonna see if I can find.
I don't remember exactly, or maybe the format came out in 2010, something along those lines. I want to say like 8th edition was around that point.
Legal. 8th edition was around. You're thinking would be around 2010.
Yeah, I think so. It's not like it's.
Yeah. It does. It is. It is 8th edition.
Okay.
So 8th edition. I'm just gonna pull it up here on MT. I think this is MTG Wiki. Yeah, MTG Fandom. So. Okay, so 8th edition was 2003.
2003, okay.
Yeah. 8th edition is 2003.
Then I think they made the modern format in 2010.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's what I think.
That makes more sense, yeah.
But I could also be wrong on that as well. I don't know.
So there's a lot. I'm looking at the set list. There's a lot of sets that are legal in Modern.
Yeah.
When I first got into Magic, I knew nothing. Like just like anybody else for starting in the game. And then, because again, I went to an F&M and played Standard, because I think like Standard is the way most card games want to get you into their game. It's the easiest entry point, and Standard is like the most recent sets. Depending upon the game, like for Magic, it's the past 2 years, I think. Normally, Pokemon's a little different, I think, because their sets are they spaced further out or.
Pokemon's is a little bit weird because it's like you can have 5 sets or something like that being rotated out of the format, but it's not always the set amount. It can also be 4 sets sometimes, or it's 5. You really don't know until they post it.
Interesting. Okay.
So, yeah, Pokemon Standard's a little different.
Okay.
So I want to say like probably like 2 to 2.5 years.
So I also find it interesting. I'm looking at the set list for Modern again, and I'm looking at the sets that released when I started playing.
Yeah.
It's starting to be a long list.
Yep.
So I'm like, oh my goodness, Rivals of Ixalan. Oh man, that's been playing. I've been playing for a bit now.
Right.
not as long as some people, but still.
That was only like a year and a half after I started. So
Yeah, I mean, you started Kaladesh, right?
yeah.
So Eldritch Moon was already out,
Yeah,
correct? Yeah.
yeah.
So that's just a few more sets, but my goodness, it's crazy.
Mhm.
Oh, crazy. So anyway, yeah. So there's a local modern tournament, and for the longest, for a pretty long time, I've been wanting to get into the modern format.
Yeah.
Because I know modern is a pretty popular constructed format. I mean, I think Commander is probably the most popular format in all of
hands
Magic.
down.
What would you say is the second?
I actually think the tabletop format is the most popular, where you just come together and play whatever cards you have. Which probably, honestly, that's probably the most.
Yeah,
Is that even a format?
Right, exactly. The way I started, because I remember sitting at the kitchen table too, no playmat, no nothing,
Yeah.
just throwing the card down. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I have no idea how this works, but we're gonna see if we can figure it out together.
Yep.
So, which, you know what, like, do more power to you. You want to play. Don't let the two of us tell you you're playing it the wrong way.
Yeah.
Like, the only time that really matters is in like a tournament or competitive setting, and even a competitive setting may not even matter depending upon the competitive setting. You know,
Especially if you come from a different game, especially Yu-Gi-Oh! If you play Magic when you came from Yu-Gi-Oh!, you can use pretty much all the cards in Yu-Gi-Oh!'s history inside of like their tournament setting. So you could be like, oh, I found these really cool cards that my dad had when he was, whatever age. And it's like, oh, I'm going to use some of these in this. And then you're like, wait, did you just drop like an OG dual land in this standard tournament, dude? Like, what are you talking about? I just came to play Magic.
Yeah, right. Well, this actually reminds me. So today I was looking on Facebook for something, and somebody posted in one of the there's a DC deck building game group that I'm in. And a lot of times people post like questions about like card interactions and how they work.
Yeah.
And so somebody posted this picture. There's two cards. Okay. One card is Lady Vic. So this is a villain. It has an ongoing effect. It says ongoing : you may discard this ability from play. If you do, +2 power. Okay. So the question is, this card is in play. This is from the Teen Titans set, which a Teen Titans set is built around the ongoing mechanic. Okay. And so that card, that villain card, is out on board. Okay. They then play the card Silent Armor. Silent Armor is a 6-cost equipment, which states draw a card. It also states you may discard an ongoing card you control. If you do, gain the top card of the main deck and put it into your hand. Okay. So it's a pretty nice effect. Okay. So the question in the group said, I have Lady Vic played as an ongoing card. So Lady Vic's out on board. When I play Silent Armor and decide to discard Lady Vic to Silent Armor's effect, does that trigger the ongoing effect of Lady Vic, or only the Silent Armor effect will take place? As I read that, the first thing that I'm thinking is, like, for me, playing Magic really helps inform just about all other card games for me.
Like, is it a cost or is it an effect, a part of this?
Right.
And then what does it state on the Lady Vic card itself?
Right. So the Lady Vic states, the only thing that it states is ongoing : so it is an ongoing effect.
Yeah.
You may discard this card from play. If you do, +2 power.
Okay.
So you can, if it's on board, you can discard it as a cost.
Yeah.
And then the effect of that cost is you get +2 power. Okay. So they were like, well, okay,
You have to resolve the effect of the other card first.
Correct. So you can't, you do not get both bonuses.
Yeah.
It's not how
Now,
it
if
works.
there was a stack, it would work like that.
If there was a, no.
Because it was the effect of get rid of a card, then proceed with the rest of the effect.
No. So try and explain that to me again, because the way that I'm like, it doesn't work, right? It doesn't
it's not going to work for the game.
It's not going to work for the game, right? But I'm interested to see how you explain this and how kind of help me kind of figure
so
it out through that.
so what?
Before that,
Yeah.
because the way that I'm thinking about it is it couldn't work because with Silent Armor, right? So Silent Armor, the ETB is draw a card, right?
Okay.
So ETB draw a card, and then the other ETBs you may discard an ongoing card to that effect.
Yeah.
But once you choose to discard the Lady Vic card to that, Lady Vic is now gone from the field, then you wouldn't be able.
It's targeted by the effect of the card. Then while that target is on the stack, you can now sacrifice that card to gain the 2 power.
Okay.
That's where I'm talking about.
Okay, yeah. If it was worded, it could be worded that way, yes.
Yeah.
The way that I'm thinking about it, because there's actually multiple different ways you could word these to
100%.
to have the intended effect, like Jim is stating here. But if part of the cost is essentially sacrificing it,
if it's cost, you can't.
Right. If the cost is sacrificing it, then you can't. But again, that's getting into very niche intricacies of rules, right?
Yeah.
And we've talked about this before, right? You always go back to what's the intended effect? Like, how is it intended to be played? So somebody commented and was like, we play it like you were suggesting. You get the 2 power from Silent Armor and you get the top card because they're both May. You can choose to do those actions or not. Since you choose to do them, you can get both. We like liberal rules that make you think of ways to build your hand. Too rigid of play makes it less fun. It's nice to think of ways that makes your triggers more powerful. I responded to that, and the only thing I basically said was, that is absolutely not how it works. That's not the intended effect of how it works. But again...
But I also like house rules. So.
Right. House rules absolutely are a thing. Like, if you want to play it a certain way, dude, like literally nothing is stopping you.
It's like free parking. Take all the taxes in the center of the Monopoly board.
But I feel like for the majority of card game players, like they just couldn't bring themselves to do that because that's wrong.
Yeah.
You absolutely can do it. You can play however you want in a house rule setting, right? Yeah. In kitchen table, you play however you want. But like, if you ever want to play a game like semi-competitively, we talked last week, we talked about casual competitive settings, right? If you ever want to play in any competitive setting, you feel like you have to know the game. You got to know the rule set. You have to know the rule set. But if it's a game like Disney Villainous, where I feel like the rules are so up in the air, like you have to know the rule set for whatever tournament you're in, right? So don't let us tell you you're playing the game wrong. You play the game however you want to play the game, but just be careful if you ever go to any sort of tournament setting, which is what we're focusing on today. I thought that was an interesting, an interesting interaction, because like I said, I feel like the majority of card game players were super focused and like OCD so much when it comes to not rules, but just like what cards state, right? And how they're supposed to be interacted with. And so like, I want to do it right. It's not for me, it's not about, I just want to get all these bonuses. I mean, that's nice. But when they were saying like it's too rigid, I'm like, that's part of the fun too, because like you have to make these difficult choices of, okay, which one is going to get me the most amount of power, right? In this case specifically, what's going to get me the most amount of resources? So, and I think that's why a lot of people like card games as well, because like you have to answer those strategic choices like every turn, right? So. Just something interesting and fun and funny that I kind of want. And I've got the post pulled up, and there's like a bunch of people have posted, and there's more people even posting. But and somebody also posted, they went to BGG and they're like, here's the designer, here's what they said. Again, BGG, great resource. But yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting. So tournament setting, know the rule set. You got to know your rule set. So, Magic Modern. Modern's a format, man. Modern is pretty good.
Probably my favorite format.
How long have you been playing Modern?
Ooh, that's a good question, Dan. How long have I been playing Modern?
Since you started Magic, how long after did you pick up Modern?
Oh man, so it was like
So
shortly after.
because when you got in, Brendan was already in Modern for the most part, correct?
Not so much. He was heavily into Standard, and then when I got in, he slowly started getting into Modern. And then he's like, "Hey, let's play this format." I'm like, "I literally don't even have a Standard deck." I'm like, "I don't even really
What are you
know how
talking
to
about?
play
Yes, you
this
did.
game."
Yes, you did.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, you
I
did.
got rid of
You
it.
had Nighthawk Scavenger.
I got rid of everything.
He was about to quit.
Vampire Nighthawk.
Oh, that's right, Vampire Nighthawk.
The Nighthawk Scav, isn't that a newer card? It's
I
pretty
think-
much
I
the
think it
same
is.
thing.
I think it's the new one from
it's-
Zendikar.
Yeah.
I'm looking it up now.
Yeah.
Nighthawk Scavenger.
And so I would say
It is.
probably
It is a new one. Yeah.
I would say probably like a year to 2 years after I got into Magic, I like really started dabbling in Modern, but I didn't really own any of the cards, so the fetches were terribly expensive at that time. And they're still expensive, now,
but they're not
it's
as
nowhere close to what it was a few years ago.
especially with the reprintings.
Yeah, there have been
from
multiple
Modern
reprints.
Horizons. Yeah.
And so,
Which, if you don't know, the resources in Magic are all lands, right? They're essentially all basic lands. Is the basic resource type.
Yeah.
The fetch lands come in, and they're essentially a dual land, right? So they can fetch one of two basic land types. So, for instance, Misty Rainforest is a Simic one. Of course, I know the Simic one offhand, right? So, blue and green.
Scalding Tarn,
There, yep.
red and blue.
Yep. What's Fiery Islet? Is that a Fiery
That's a
Islet? Is
canopy land.
That's a canopy land. Okay.
Yeah.
So Misty Rainforest comes in untapped. You can tap it and pay a life. Search for any forest. Doesn't have to be a basic. Any forest or island.
Yep.
And then it comes into play. Mostly what you normally do with your fetch lands is you fetch a shock land. Which shock land you pay 2 life. That shock land comes in untapped. And the shock land again for Simic is Breeding Pool. Okay, so you can find Breeding Pool, comes in, pay 2 life, it untaps, and then it taps for a blue, which is island, or forest, which is
But
green.
you don't have to go find the one that says forest and island. It's
Correct.
forest or island.
island, yes,
So you
correct.
could use the, why am I now forgetting its name? Misty Rainforest to go find a completely different one if you want.
And now with the triomes, are they're 3 land
so
types.
good.
They are super good.
Yeah, they don't enter untapped,
Right.
but they have 3 different colors.
They do if you have an Amulet Titan. Actually, I take that back. They do enter tapped. Amulet Titan just untap
Triggers and-
Amulet of Vigor. Amulet of Vigor. I'm saying Amulet Titan's the name of the deck,
yeah,
which we're going to talk
Amulet
about.
of Vigor.
Which we're going to talk about it. But anyway, so if you didn't know, that's what those are. So Modern, I just started getting into it. I've been wanting to get into it for a while. So what we wanted to do is we've got like kind of 3 tips, okay, that they're pretty broad, but I think apply to just about any type of tournament setting that you're wanting to get into, okay? So we're going to talk about them, and then we're kind of going to discuss it amongst ourselves, like how we're going to apply it, for what we're doing in the tournaments that we are entering. Okay. So the first one is know your play style.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I feel like know your play style is very important. You know, we've kind of talked about this in a few different episodes, right? Like you want to have fun, right? You want to play decks that you find fun. Okay. The biggest danger is losing interest in the game that you once loved, right? Like that's the biggest danger, right? Because if you're not having fun, then you're going to stop playing. But also like that can very much deter you from competing and winning, right? And if you're trying to win money, and some of these tournaments are decent money, right? That can help you out. Then that's not good as well, right? So know your play style is huge, right? So for me, right, Jim hates green, but I like green. I've always really liked green. Like, to be honest, green's my favorite color, just in everything. I like green as a color. I mean, I also find it interesting. I also think I've seen something somewhere. I'll have to find it, but like a lot of gingers like the color green for some, which is really weird.
Because it's contrasting.
Yes, I think so. Yeah. So for whatever reason, I've always liked green.
Color.
I've always liked, on the color wheel, it's the opposite, right? So yeah, red and green are complementary. But it's weird. I'm not a big Gruul player.
Yeah.
Gruul is the red and green
Gruul
color.
is gross.
Is a red and green color combination magic. But yeah, like I'm not a big Gruul player. Gruul's cool, but just not for me. So I've always found myself drawn towards anything green. I really enjoy Simic, which who doesn't?
Yeah, who doesn't?
That
right,
guy.
guys?
Yeah. So I've always been drawn to green. Anything that's creature based, I've always found interest in. But also like just the way that I play decks, I tend to enjoy mid-range lists and or combo decks. The biggest thing that I like about combo decks is really, you really got to be thinking through combo decks because you have to know your lines. You have to know your lines. And like the lines, it's not the same thing every time.
Yeah.
A lot of the times because like while your end goal might be the same, like how you get there, there's so many different ways to get there. And so when I first found out about the deck Amulet Titan, I mean, I was immediately like around that time too, like I was trying to build a Jund lands deck for Commander, right? So I was big into the lands mechanic and like how it worked because this was really my first card game where like you had to have your resources, your lands built into your deck, right? Yeah. Before that, I was playing a lot of digital card games where your resources were just automatic, right?
Automatically.
Hearthstone, turn one, you get a resource. Next turn, you get a resource, and so on and so forth. So while the lands mechanic is super old school, it was new to me, right?
Yeah.
So understanding that mechanic and then landfall, finding that. I mean, Magic as a game has just had so many iterations over the years, and they've really found new and interesting ways to design around their existing mechanics. So when I discovered lands, I'm like, all right, what is this? And then I found Amulet Titan, and then I'm like, oh, these come in tapped, but then they can bounce a land, and then they just untap, and then they tap for 2. I was immediately like, okay, I think that's a deck I'm gonna eventually end up playing.
Right.
So like that was me. And so once I saw that, and that was years ago, like that deck. And so that deck is still around. Yeah. The thing that's with Modern, you correct me if I'm wrong, right? These archetypes, okay, are similar. These archetypes just stay around for a while. They just keep getting new and different cards added to their lists, right?
Yep. Pretty much the only thing that doesn't always stick around are fair decks in Modern. The ones that are just like land and like play something like a turn. Also a little bit like a tempo deck as well.
Yeah.
But it's just looking to do like 1 or 2 things every single turn. Nothing too crazy to accelerate the board state. You know, it's like when we're talking about dropping a Primeval Titan on turn 3. Is a completely different story than being like, oh, here's a Liliana and we're both going to discard. Like, sure, I get a little value from what's in my graveyard if I got like now a, why can't I think of his name? Tarmogoyf out on board, you know? But yeah, it's sometimes fair decks will still be around, and as of right now, Jund isn't like too high up on the meta list, but it's still
so. And when Jim says fair decks, essentially what we mean when we say fair deck is like we just talked about in digital card games. A lot of it was Turn 1, you get 1 resource. Turn 2,
Yeah.
you get another resource. So now you're
Yeah.
at 2 resources. Turn 3. So by turn 5, you have 5 resources to go on turn 5. In Magic, that's the same thing with your land drops, right? Turn 1, there's 1 land. You got 1 resource.
Yeah.
And then so on and so forth. 2, 3, 4, and so on and so forth.
Tron for the first 2 turns is a fair deck, right? You're like, oh, 1 mana, 2 mana. What do you mean 3 mana turned into 7 mana?
Yep.
And then it's like, all right, now we're playing not fair
so
Magic.
so Primeval Titan is a 6 mana card. Okay.
Yep.
So it costs 4 colorless and 2 green mana. Okay. For a 6/6, which states when he ETBs, you can go find any 2 lands in your deck and put them onto the battlefield tapped. Any 2
Except
lands.
then Amulet triggers and
And
they
then
don't.
Amulet,
they're not
then they
tapped.
untapped. Yeah. So if
And then
you're-
you give them haste, and then you swing and do it again.
So if you're talking about a a card that costs 6 mana and then I can cast it on turn 3,
yeah,
like we were going over lines the other day of
multiple ways to do this.
multiple ways of how to do it. So we're like, all right, does this card work? Okay, what if we take this one out and put this one in? Can we still make it to where we get Amulet or prime time?
Yeah.
Nickname is Prime Time, right? You get Prime Time on turn 3. We're like, okay, yeah, it still works. It still works.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's not fair. I mean, we've all been playing a game, right? Any game to where you do something like that, right? It's like that card is supposed to cost you 6 mana, but you're casting it now on turn 2 or turn 3 when you're not supposed to be able to do that, right?
Yeah.
It's figuring out ways to manipulate the game, right? But you're not, right?
And I was telling Dan, like, as I'm looking through the list of a lot of the meta decks, I'm like, it looks like Burn is just the most fair deck, which is crazy to say.
Right.
And then it's just nuts because it's also a combo deck. Did you know that?
Burn?
Yeah.
How so?
It's a 7-card combo where it's all lightning bolts to the face to just kill them.
Yeah.
7-card combo.
Yeah. So by the time I just realized this, by the time this podcast airs, so if you caught us on stream last weekend, we probably were prepping. We were probably tournament prepping. So I really because we record these episodes like a week in advance. So yeah, by the time you're watching this, if you didn't catch us on stream, go check out the stream, and pretty much the entire stream is just going to be us prepping and talking about the meta and just figuring out, basically just prepping, right? Just straight tournament prepping, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, just realize that. So go check that out. So Jim, like what is your play style? Like what decks do you normally tend to find yourselves playing?
For me, it's very few creatures.
Yep.
I don't really like to think about creatures out on board. I want to keep stuff hidden in my hand. You know, whether it is I'm kind of playing aggressive just with spell slinging. I just want to be throwing cards out there, honestly. Instant speed stuff, even sorcery stuff. I don't really care because I still like doing things on my turn as well, especially if they're good effects, right? But yeah, I want to be controlling the board and then just throwing damage over my opponent's stuff to where they just can't stop it. Yeah. That's really what I like to do.
And the other thing too is like I think it's more important, maybe not necessarily important, but like I would stick to looking at play styles and not looking at colors, right? When you're trying to find a deck to play, like know what type of deck you like to play. Not like, oh, like I said, I like green. I'm just gonna find just green stuff. Yeah, I don't do that. Like you're restricting yourself too much, right? Because when we get into the next point, which we'll talk about here in a minute, like you could find yourselves not finding a lot of good decks to play. Which again, just you don't even have to look at the meta and say, okay, I'm going to pick one of these. You don't necessarily have to do that. You don't have to, but you still need to know them, right? So that leads us into our next point, right?
One thing I did want to go over as well. So knowing your play style is very important, but you can, especially if you're like newer to the game, you can find a deck that's just really easy to play. That's not so much your play style. It's just a really strong deck. And you could be like, I really like this deck, right? So I'm not too big into graveyard strategies.
Oh, I love graveyard
But
strategies.
when a few years ago, there was a card from Modern Horizons 1. Why can't I remember his name right now?
I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah,
I'll pull it up.
he's a Golgari card.
Yep,
He's a big boy. He was so broken. I think he's the second
banned.
most.
Yeah,
he's
he got
in the
banned.
format.
Yep, he got banned super quick.
The deck was Hogak.
Hogak. Yep, there we go.
I got him. So this card really utilized the graveyard. And,
So I got it pulled up too.
okay, and so you would essentially mill your entire deck and play him a couple times every turn, and then eventually mill your opponent out. And this was like turn 2, turn 3. Like for sure they were dead on turn 3.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, this guy was just ridiculously OP. I think he's the second most broken deck inside of Modern ever.
How now? What do you mean by that though? Like, what do you mean the second most broken?
So if we're
how do you
talking-
gauge that?
So there are, I guess, talking about like tournament showings of list, and
okay.
also they a lot of places will do a no ban list Modern tournament. Yeah, and Cloud Post is always the number one deck. Eldrazi Cloud Post
Okay.
is the most broken deck in the entire Modern format.
Okay. All right.
And yeah, we're talking about every card off the ban list, and this one is still showing like over 60% of destroying everything of top 8s.
Wow.
So yeah, so like you can have a play style, but you can also find these other decks that you really like, and it's like, man, I don't normally like to do this stuff.
Right.
But this deck is dumb.
Right. So yeah, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But before we do, I want to read the card. So Hogak Arisen Necropolis. Okay, it's a 7 mana card. So 5
Is he though?
5 colorless, 5
Super
colorless,
fair.
and Golgari, meaning it's 5 colorless and a black, green, and a
It's hybrid.
hybrid mana. So black or green and another black or green. Okay. Legendary creature avatar. You can't spend mana to cast this spell. And it also has Convoke and Delve. Okay. Convoke is each creature you tap while casting the spell pays for a colorless mana. Okay. Or 1 mana of that creature's color. Okay. So if it's a green creature, it can pay for a green mana.
Or if it's a black zombie.
Correct. If it's a black token zombie creature. Yep. Now, Delve is each card you exile from your graveyard pays for a colorless mana. Okay. And then it also states you may cast Hogak Arisen Necropolis from your graveyard. Trample, and it's an 8/8. So it's an 8/8 trampling beater.
Dan, how could you possibly get this out on turn 2?
Fill your graveyard.
There's a few
there's
cards.
multiple ways you could do it. Fill your graveyard, turn 1, in turn 2. And yeah, it's
The deck's stupid.
but you do need to have 2 creatures out on board, correct?
Yeah, but there's an enchantment for that gets you.
Oh, there is?
Yeah, don't worry about it. It's not hard.
That's the thing with Modern. It's like, yeah, dude, there's a card for that. Don't worry
Yeah,
about
there's
it.
a card for that.
If there's a slogan for formats, Moderns is don't worry, there's a card for that. Not in Pioneer, like not yet. Pioneer's too new, and their card pool's not there yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, Modern, there's a card for that. Dude, that's a shirt design. I'm writing it down now. Modern, there's a card for that.
Yeah. Oh, that should be one of our emotes for the Twitch.
Yes.
Twitch chat. There's a card.
There's
for
a
it.
card for that. What card is this? Oh, there's a card for that.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
don't worry
great.
about
That's
that. We'll
great.
find it.
Yeah. All right. So this leads us into the next thing we want to talk about is knowing the meta and knowing the format, right? So originally we kind of had these separate, but we thought it made more sense to talk about them together, right? So it's knowing the format meta. So I think it makes more sense to say know the format meta too, right? So there's so many ways you can do this. You know, a couple weeks ago, I think we talked about net decking, right? So embrace it. And if you're a tournament player, I mean, you're doing it, period, end of story. You are, right? I don't think there's any good tournament player who's not doing that because you have to research what the competition is doing, right?
You have to know the cards you're looking to beat.
Correct. Exactly.
Am I faster than all these other decks, or am I playing a control list? All right, well, now what control spells do I need to be taking out these cards?
So I was doing a little bit of research past couple days. I found there's 2 sites that I like to utilize: MTG Top 8 and then MTG Goldfish. Goldfish, I feel like Goldfish has got to be one of the premier places to look at what's going on in the formats, the meta in the formats.
They show like all the big events, or bigger events, and same thing with MTGO. They have like all that stuff recorded.
Yeah, so basically these sites aggregate all the tournament results for players looking to figure out what's going on in the metagames, right? So like for Modern, right, I'd go over to MTG Top 8, and then I look at like, it shows you the last major events and then the last 20 events. The nice thing is MTG Top 8 gives you a meta breakdown. And according to MTG Top 8, 46% of the field is aggro lists. I feel like, which is a lot. 46% is a good chunk. 24% control, and then 30% combo. That's a pretty good spread. That's a pretty good spread. That's a pretty healthy spread. One thing that I did notice, which Standard used to never be like this, and I don't feel like it's still. I don't know what Standard looks like right now, but I looked at a tournament. The top 8 decks, they were all different decks save one. There were in the top 8 decks. Wow. In the top 8 decks, there were 7 different decks.
That's crazy.
That was, I believe, that 10K SCG Con in Dallas.
Wow.
Yes. So in that tournament, the first place deck was a Cord Toolbox deck. Second place was Omnath Elementals. Third and fourth place, Crashing Footfalls Cascade. There was an Amulet Titan deck, a Creature's Toolbox deck, a Living End deck, and then a blue-red aggro deck. So that's crazy. Yeah. So we talk about like healthy metagames and deck diversity. That's what we're talking about, is having these so many different types of decks inside the tournament, right?
Yeah.
So like that's pretty great. So you look at MTG Top 8. So I pull up Modern, and so I'm looking at the top decks, right? So for aggro, like 7% aggro is blue-red aggro. The 7% is Crashing Footfalls Cascade. Then I look at control, like 4-color control. It looks like an Omnath control list, and that's 7%. And the next largest share for that is 5% blue-white control.
Yeah. Blue-white control is so strong. They have so many stupid cards.
And then the next thing is 3% is Urzatron or Tron.
Yeah. Which is a mono green control list.
Right. So what is the green card? What is the green card in that list?
2 green cards. Well, you could have more in the sideboard. Some list will play Thrag Tusk, which just gets you more health.
Yeah.
And then, so the 2 main boarded cards are Ancient
Stirrings and Sylvan Scrying.
I always mix those 2 up. I'm like, Ancient Scrying. I'm like, no, that's not it.
No. Yeah, Ancient Stirrings, it basically pulls you a colorless card.
Yeah.
And then
the top 5.
Sylvan Scrying
gets you
for a land. Yeah. Any land. Yep. I know that because I played that in a lot of my commander decks. Yeah. Which is a good card. It's a good card because it hits any land.
And like Dan was saying earlier, I'm not a big fan of green, but it's like there really isn't a whole lot of green in here, even though it's a mono green list. It's all like colorless, and again, it's a control list, and you just play like big dumb stuff.
Yeah. So. So I enjoy control lists as well. Yeah. Like when I found myself playing control lists like on Arena, I'm like, these decks are kind of fun. I mean. That's what I really love about card games is all these different types of decks that you think you enjoy playing one thing and then you go play something else. You're like, I don't know if I'm going to like it. And then you're like, oh, no, this is actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. So for me, right, I mean, I know the deck I'm playing, right? I've got my deck. And so now I'm at the point now to where I'm like, all right, what specific cards, like how am I going to toolbox this deck? Like, and toolbox isn't the right word, but it is for my deck. Yeah, it is definitely for my deck for sure.
Definitely.
But I'm trying to figure out, like, there's lands where I'm like, okay.
So if you guys don't know what toolbox is in these card games, it's a lot of one-ofs, but you have a really easy time to go find exactly what you need to be able to stop whatever deck it is. So like when we were talking about Primeval Titan, on ETB, he can go look for 2 lands, and then also when it attacks. So he can go find a land, say his opponent really likes having the graveyard. All right, well, now he can go look for a Bajuka Bog and exile target player's graveyard. Or if he's versing a control list, he wants to go look for that Cavern of Souls and call what? Elemental Titan? I don't even remember what he is.
It's a giant.
Oh, is he giant? Okay.
Yeah, it's a giant.
So then that way, all the future prime times that come out onto the board, if he taps it with this Cavern of Souls, they can't be countered.
Yep.
Very, very powerful stuff.
Yeah.
Along with, he's also playing the Karn, I forget his name.
Great creator.
Great creator, which is a planeswalker. He can do a -2 ability. -2, go into the side deck that he has and take an artifact from there and put it into your hand.
Yeah, when I first saw the Karn version of Amulet Titan, I'm like, dude, this looks sick. This looks
nice.
So cool.
And normally you only have access to the cards in your side deck in between every single turn. It's like, all right, I'm going to take cards from my main deck out and swap
in between
them
each games.
Yeah, my bad. In between each game. Did I say turn?
Yeah, you said turn.
That'd be broken, right?
Yeah. So the thing about Amulet Titan too is the lands are super toolboxy too, because there's the land cycle from Adventures in Forgotten Realms.
Oh yeah, those things.
There's I'm not sure what the land cycle is called, but like the blue one, Hall of the Storm Giants, you can turn into a 7/7 with Ward 3.
Yeah.
Costs 6 mana to do that. So that's a good chunk of resources. But I think the better land to use in this situation is like Lair of the Hydra.
Yeah.
It's the activated ability costs X and a green. More importantly, it taps for green. Like if, from a colored mana standpoint, I am in more dire need of green than blue. Right? I don't need blue, but green, yes. So Lair of the Hydra, the activated ability costs X and a green, to where you can pay X and a green, and then turn the land into an XX green Hydra. Okay. So that is so much more versatile than pay 6, turn it into a 7/7, right?
Because you could also turn it into a 3/3 if you
turn it into a 3/3 as a blocker, right? Which maybe it dies, but being able to block like a living end, you know, honestly, just pay 2 mana, keeping that thing untapped. I mean, you would need 3 mana essentially to do that.
You have a lot of different use cases.
Yeah, there's so many different
defensive,
use cases.
or you need to go on the offensive. And you're like, okay, this is how much damage I'm going to have with creatures out on board. Prime Time's going to get in for an attack for sure. The Valakut trigger. Okay, now it looks like I need 5 more damage. Let me go ahead and pump this guy and swing in as well.
Yeah. And then there's like Teleria West, being able to transmute, look for a 0 cost card.
Yeah.
What would you look for, Jim? What would you look for with Teleria West?
You know, if it was me, I just love Valakut so much.
True.
But also,
you could do that.
Also the Summoner's Pact.
Yeah, Summoner's Pact.
That's like the number one.
Which is a 0 cost card, which says you can go find any creature in your deck.
Yeah.
Any creature.
A Prime Time.
Yep, probably.
Most likely.
Or a Cultivator Colossus.
Yeah,
maybe.
whatever you need.
Whatever you need.
Yeah.
Or a Emrakul.
Yeah, or an Emrakul. That's fine.
And So the thing that is, when Urza's Saga got printed, Urza's Saga is such a busted card.
Is so good.
It is so good. The
card is so good in that deck.
It is. It's insane. So Urza's Saga is an enchantment land. Okay. Which there's 3 steps, okay? Step 1, or Chapter 1, it can tap for a colorless mana. Chapter 2, it can still tap for the colorless mana, or you can pay 2 mana and tap it to make a 0/0 artifact construct, which it gets +1/+1 for all your artifacts you control. So regardless, it's going to be a 1/1, and then just gets bigger from there. Chapter 3. states, on chapter 3, you sacrifice Urza's Saga and then go search for a 1 or 0 cost artifact. What'd you probably go search up? Now, it's obviously dependent. Obviously, it's dependent. But I'm only running like 5 artifacts.
If it was me, right, inside playing this deck, it's either Amulet of Vigor or I'm going for that Expo map.
Expo map, yep.
To then go get another Urza Saga.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
and make more constructs.
But the crazy thing about Urza Saga, a lot of the times, I feel like the normal thing to think about when talking about these sagas is, like, let's say you drop Urza Saga turn 1, right? Turn 3, I'm not expecting to be able to use it on turn 3. On turn 3, I'm just expecting to sacrifice it to that ability. But with Urza Saga, you can still, because this happens in your main phase, you can tap it for colorless, or you can pay 2 and tap it to create a construct. So it's crazy. So over the life of the Urza Saga, you can potentially tap it for a colorless and create 2 constructs,
which are now 2/2s.
Which are now 2/2s.
2 of them.
Okay. And then, but then it's no, they're not.
Now they become 3/3s.
They're 3/3s.
Now they become 3/3s.
Yes, because you're finding an artifact and it's going straight to field. Yeah, Urza Saga is just a busted card. The first time I saw it, I just saw land. I'm like, oh, land. I can go.
So real quick, it is technically 2/2 because your opponent can still hold that other one out on the stack if there was something that they had of like deal 2 damage to a creature.
Right.
So yes, there's still 2/2s.
Right.
But once it fully resolves,
yes.
and you go get that artifact and put it out onto the field, now you have 2 3/3s out on board.
Right. Yeah. So. Yeah, Urza Saga. So the Urza Sagas are now multiple copies of your Amulet of Vigor or your Expedition map.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing about tutors, right? That, like, before I really got into card games in general, I never really thought about. But tutors find your best cards. So essentially, they're acting like more copies of your best cards because you're going to find them.
Yeah.
And in this deck in particular, there's so many of those types of cards. You have your 4 Urza Sagas, you have your 4 Summoners packs, okay, which can find any creature. Then you have 2 Teleria Wests at least, right? And again, you can modify these numbers however you see fit.
Find any land in your deck,
or Summoners pack.
To then go find any creature in your deck.
Expedition map finds you any land.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's like there's so many different lines.
Yeah.
And this is what I talk about with the combos, right? There's so many different lines.
Yeah. It's like, what tool do you need from your box real quick to take? I need a screwdriver. I'll take this hammer.
And you know what else? With Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, Beseiju, who endures, busted card. That is such a cool card. I mean, you're telling me I just pay 1 and a green and discard it to then blow up any enchantment artifact?
So this is the other thing, right? Like like he was just going over with this card, discarding it from your hand. You have a lot of bounce lands in the deck that enter tapped, bounce a card from the field out
a land.
into a land back into your hand, and then it enters tapped. Well, except then Amulet of Vigor untaps it, and then you have 2 mana chill in there.
Right.
So then he now has the Beseiju chilling in hand. Now, if you want to do that effect of discarding it, now you can. Or you have the, Radiant Fountain?
Yeah.
To where if you ever need to gain more life, okay, put it back in. Bounce the Vesuva back to your hand if you now want a different target out on there.
And see, the Vesuva just acts as another copy of another land.
Yeah, of any other land.
Any other land that you need. Oh, I need to exile your graveyard again? Okay, Vesuva copy Bajuka Bog.
Yeah.
It's so
cool. Or
cool.
bounce the Bajuka Bog and then do it again.
Exactly.
It's nuts.
It's so crazy. Yeah, like Radiant Fountain, when we were playtesting, he was playing Burn, right? I'm like, okay, I'm highly prioritizing Radiant Fountain here because I'm going to need the life. I'm
Yeah.
going to need the life. And I did, right? So many times I'm like, all right, Radiant Fountain, Vesuva, I'm copying Radiant Fountain just to gain that life, just to keep me in a healthy life total. And then I'll hit you for 18 in one turn.
Yeah, that was rough. after
Wait,
it
I
hit me,
thought about it. I'm like, did I just hit you for 18? Holy cow.
Yeah.
I love this deck.
it was nuts. It was so crazy because it was like after that game he hit me for 18. I play a Shockland. I'm like, oh man, I'm in lethal range right now. I go to 18. I'm like, oh boy.
Like, are you sure you want it to come in untapped?
I don't have a choice. So yeah, that was so fun.
Yeah. So, and then like as we were talking about it, right? I'm like, okay, do I want to have Crucible of Worlds in the sideboard, right? So specifically talking about Boseiju, right? Because Crucible of Worlds is a 3-mana artifact, I believe, which states you can play lands from your graveyard, right?
Yeah.
So if I discard a Boseiju to blow up a Blood Moon or something, then I can play that from my graveyard, and then potentially bounce it back to my hand, right? So like Crucible of Worlds in a Karn list, okay, where it's searchable.
Super doable.
The only problem, not problem, but the only thing is I just have to play Karn to then go find the Crucible of Worlds to then play it. So it's slow from that standpoint. But
that card is already a grindy card, so
Correct.
you know the game is going to take a bit longer.
Right. So the only the question that I need to answer, right, because I'm legitimately considering putting it in the sideboard, right, is do I think it's going to be worth it for the card slot in the sideboard? Like, that's the question.
And as we get closer, like, we'll just see how prevalent, like, land destruction is or a control deck. Right? Because then you could also be playing the Field of Ruin, the Strip Mine, or whatever card is going to be for land hate. And then you're just like, all right, well, now let me keep destroying this stuff.
Right. And so, like, we talk about knowing your format meta, okay? Like, when we're looking at all these sites, like MTG Top 8 and MTG Goldfish, amazing resources, definitely utilize them, right? And honestly, like, even if you're not playing in a tournament, like, just to see what decks are out there, right? What I like to do, honestly, is if I'm not like Legacy, right, I'll just look at the decks and I'll be like, okay, what is this deck doing? And then I just read the cards and say, oh, that is a very cool synergy, right? And so, like, that's how I enjoy finding these different card synergies and like, oh, maybe I want to put that into a commander deck or whatever. But I think I always find it very interesting just finding these synergies, right? Because that's the only way I'm going to find them, right? I'm not going to find it by going
unless you just know the cards, right?
Like, that's like with Magic, there's so many different sets, so many cards out there.
And there's a lot of times where I'm looking at, especially in like the blue and red stuff, blue, red, and black, like I'll really be able to notice something. It's like, oh man, this could work with this and this and this. But if you show me like some green and white cards or, colors I'm not used to, it's like, okay, I don't really know what to do with this, because I never play this stuff.
So like for me, like with Amulet Titan specifically, right? I'm looking at all the different Amulet Titan lists. I'm not finding any that are playing Karn, because I found one list on one YouTube channel that ran it. I watched the video. I'm like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I want to play that.
Yeah.
I want to put this card in my deck for sure. Yeah. I'm trying to find no other lists that I'm finding is running it. But then I'm watching all these other videos and then all these other matches, and I'm like, dude, Karn would be amazing here. Because even forget about the artifact that I'm going to find, because like I know what artifact I'd use, right? It's just Karn's just a huge threat that my opponent is then wasting. They're using all these other resources on that card, right? So now they've used their removal on that. Now I have an open spot for Prime Time or Cultivator Colossus or something else. But like the thing with combo decks in general is, I think, is you know what the payoff is. Your opponent knows what the payoff is, right? So you need to have forget about different ways and different lines to get to your payoff. You need to have other ways of closing out the game and finishing it. You can't just rely on, in Amulet Titan specifically, you can't just rely on Primeval Titan. If your opponent knows that's all you've got, then you've got a problem.
Yeah.
You do have a problem, right?
It also gives you the upper hand when it comes to a game one setting.
Yes,
Because
true.
it's like a lot of decks, you'll have a sideboard that is like, okay, when I'm going up against this one deck, I will now be bringing in these cards. Well, then you have to find those cards in your deck to where when it comes to the Karn inside of this list, well, you now have a bunch of one-ofs in your sideboard, and you're like, okay, this one is going to be really good against this deck. I need to go get this one card. So rather than you having no chance in a game one, if it's like 100% chance you lose if you don't have these cards, well, then having the Karn gives you that opportunity. And it doesn't go into the deck. It's now not shuffled in, and now you got to find it at some point directly into hand, and now you can play it.
Right. So with Karn specifically, right, the only question you need to answer is, do I still play Karn, or do I just put those cards directly into the deck? Because the only time you're going to do that is if you're playing against a super fast deck, right? To where if you're searching with Karn, you're too slow, right? Because then the question is, okay, I have to play out Karn, I have to find that other card, then play. Like a good example is Engineered Explosives, right? Engineered Explosives is it's an artifact, I believe, costs XX. Okay, comes in with X charge counters on it, and then you can pay 2, sacrifice it, and then destroy each non-land permanent with mana value that's X. Okay, if you're playing that with Karn, you got to pay 4 for Karn.
It's so good against tokens.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Stupid. 2 mana destroy all tokens.
Yep. But if you're playing something that even just costs 1 mana. Okay. Like
Burn has a couple.
Burn's got a few, right? You have to get to the 4. Like your threshold isn't just 4 because you have to play out Karn, then you have to go search for it. Okay, then you have to pay the 2 just to play it, to put 1 charge counter on it. Then you have to pay 2 more. So that's 8 mana, right? Which 8 isn't a difficult threshold to get for this deck in particular. It's the time that it takes to get there. That's the problem. And so there was one turn where I drew into that because I boarded it in, and then I can't remember if I won that game or not, but I believe I took out 2 cards. I took out 2 or 1 card.
I'm pretty
but
sure
I put that card on, and now he knows it's a threat, so he's got to do something about it. But just using Karn is just too slow in that particular spot. So,
so rough.
So this goes into our last point. So the last point that we have is you have know your play style, right? So you know what kind of decks you like to play. At this point, you've chosen a deck that you're going to play. Okay, you've done some research into the meta, into the format, right? You know what decks are out there. Okay, and so now it comes to knowing your deck. Okay, now it comes down to building your deck and then knowing your deck. Okay, so that's kind of where, like, for me, we're kind of in like step 2 and 3, right? We're researching, and like the whole research phase, that's going to take it takes a while, right? It's not just okay, we looked and we've seen, okay, now you're done. Like that's not how it goes. Like a lot of the times it's, if you know upcoming events, look at the events. Most of these events they're public information. And again, the decks get posted. Everything gets posted. Look at the deck list that people are playing, because that gives you info on what other people are playing and then what other people potentially will play as well. Okay, so you know what to prepare for. So that's kind of where we're at. Like I'm looking at a lot of these Amulet Titan lists just to see what those decks are playing. Okay, looking at one of the top decks, this Murktide Regent. It's basically an Is It aggro. It's an Is It aggro list, right? So I need a lot of graveyard hate, a lot of graveyard hate. Burn's the top one, and then this Crashing Footfalls list, right?
Rhinos,
which looks really cool. When I found the list, I'm like, what in the world? Which happens a lot with a lot of these decks. I'm like, what in the world is this deck? What is it built around? It is, and that deck runs Blood Moon.
I think
that deck runs Blood Moon.
I think they cascade into this and on turn 3, and then just have some Rhinos.
Yeah,
I think it's what 2 4/4s.
I think
with
it's
haste?
2 4/4s. Yeah, Crashing Footfalls, 2 4/4 green Rhinos with trample. Yeah,
okay, with trample.
Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. But it's preparing for this. So like they're running Blood Moons. Blood Moon, all right, Boseiju.
Yeah.
Boseiju takes care of that, no problem.
Yeah.
They're running I've seen this. They're running an Ashiok Dream Render.
Yeah.
So you can't search,
Mhm.
right? So that sucks when I have
That's
to
a good
search my
card.
intact,
That's such
search
a
my
good
deck.
card.
Ashiok Dream Render is such a good sideboard card
Yeah.
for sure.
I've loved playing that card in Commander because you know how much people search in Commander?
Oh
Nearly
yeah.
all the time.
I ran that in my Muldrotha list.
I remember at Grapple, there was one guy who was sitting to the left of me,
Uh-huh.
and I think he was playing Sultai something.
Okay.
And I went first, or I went right before him. And on my turn 3, I played the Ashiok, and he's just like, dude, really? Like he was getting ready to cultivate and do other stuff. I'm like, whoo, glad we stopped that.
Yeah, Ashiok is such a good guy. And there have been multiple times too where
I love hate bear cards.
Yes.
What is wrong with me?
Dude, I do too. Like I hate playing against it, but I also love playing it, right?
Yeah.
There was a time where like I played out Ashiok, and then I think it was Tyler.
Yeah.
I think he went to cast Cultivate or something, and I'm like,
I can't.
you can't. I'll let you take the spell back because it's still legal spell to cast. You can still cast a spell. You just don't get the effect. I'll let you take it back, but you can't do that. And I'm like, I won't even activate Ashiok. I'll just leave him out on the field.
Yeah.
That
or
was
if
the
they're
thing.
not paying attention and they have fetches.
That was the thing with War of the Spark. Those
Dude, that was so many good cards.
That was the set that introduced static abilities on Planeswalkers.
Yeah.
That was such a good set.
Yeah, it was so good.
Such a good set. Yeah, like Ashiok. Ashiok is.
Oh yeah, I was just thinking about her. There she is. That Chandra over there.
Yeah. Oh. No,
is that the one?
No, that's M20. That's M21.
Oh, is
that's
it?
Awakened Inferno.
Oh yeah,
that's
I love that one too.
The one from War of the Spark was good too.
Yeah,
they were all really good.
The Ral Zarek to just kill someone with their infinite combo. Oh,
the Ob Nixilis one.
Oh, what was
where
the
your opponent draws a card? When your opponents draw a card, they lose a life.
Ooh.
I'm pretty sure.
Ooh.
I want to double check here, because Ob Nixilis is coming back. Well, is back, I think, in the next the next set.
Which he's Rakdos in this next one, I think.
All right, let's see. Yeah, okay, yep. Ob Nixilis, the Hate Twisted, and this was an uncommon Planeswalker. That was the thing too. Like this is the first set where they had uncommon Planeswalkers. But whenever an opponent draws a card, Ob Nixilis, the Hate Twisted, deals a damage to that player.
Play him in Nekazar.
Yes. Oh, they do. 100%.
Oh, yeah.
100%. 100% it's in there. Yep.
It's literally Nekazar's effect.
Yep. It is. Yep.
Just one less damage.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So know your deck, right? Yeah. So know what's out there, and then figure out what specific cards, because at this point you've already have like a shell, right? Like if you're trying to figure out what specific cards. Like for Amulet Titan, for instance, okay, you're running 4 Primeval Titans, 4 Amulet of Vigors, 4 Urza Sagas.
Yep.
There's a good chunk of the deck that's already made up for you, right? For if you're not running 4 Arboreal Grazers, you're wrong. Fight me.
For real though,
straight up, you run it. Okay.
What's the other one?
Sakura Tribe Scout.
Yeah.
So we were having this discussion, right? So Sakura Tribe Scout is a 1 mana 1/1. Which has an activated ability, tap it, put a land from your hand onto the battlefield. And it's not tapped, I believe. I don't believe it's tapped. But the problem my point was in a fast format, Sakura Tribe Scout is so much worse because you don't get the effect right away. Okay. Number one. Number two, it's got to survive for a turn. It's a 1/1, dies to literally anything. Literally anything, it's dead. Yeah. Okay. So like it's
what it doesn't die to? Grazer.
Yeah, that's true because Grazer's a 0/3. But the upside, especially in a format where Ragavan is a thing. Which is Ragavan a 2/1?
Yeah, he's a 2/1.
Yeah, so unlikely Ragavan's attacking into that. But still, if you have a Grazer, a 0/3 body is blocking a lot of early game threats and surviving.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. He survives pretty much everything turn 1.
Yeah. So the ceiling is
Except for a lightning
the
bolt.
ceiling for Sakura Tribe Scout is higher.
Yeah.
But I just don't think you're ever getting there.
It's
You're not getting off the floor, I don't think.
Yeah, it's a lot more grindy because it's just, all right, turn 2 I can do this effect, turn 3 I can do this effect, turn 4. If it's there, you can do this effect.
Right.
Or you can give yourself the guaranteed ETB 03, play another land.
Right.
Which then makes it to where turn 2 you're dropping your Dryad, which is what you really want.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, like the game, the play, the best play you want is turn 1
Gazer.
Turn 1 Grazer into a bounce land, returning the first land you played. And then turn 3 you can play a turn 3 threat like a Dryad, and then play out another land.
Yeah.
And so by turn 3 you have 5 mana.
Wouldn't the best turn 1 be land, Grazer, untapped land, Amulet of Vigor?
No, with Grazer,
the
land comes in tapped.
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
So
that's
terrible.
That's the downside to Grazer. Is it comes in tapped.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So a good play would be turn 1 Amulet of Vigor, turn 2 Grazer into a bounce land.
Yeah.
Okay, and then untap it.
Yeah.
And now you have access to 3 mana.
Yeah. So that's even better than
Yeah, because then on turn 2 you put down Grazer and you have a Dryad and you have your Amulet on turn 2.
Yeah.
Which is huge. That's huge.
Yeah, it is. I guess regardless you can make it happen.
No, because then you'd have 4 mana. You'd have 4 mana turn 2 because turn 1 Forest.
Yeah.
Okay, tap Forest. For your Amulet.
Amulet of Vigor.
Okay. Turn 2.
Oh, yeah, because then that comes in untapped.
Untapped.
And after you tap it for the Grazer, you still have that 2 mana up. Oh, yeah, that's an even better line.
That's a better line.
Wow, all right.
We
made it even better.
That's such a good line. Yeah. But yeah, and have an Urza Saga.
Yeah. Yeah. So like we were saying, in a combo deck, like you have to know all these different
your lines.
To do.
Yeah, because you really do. Like, we had a podcast with Steven from Team Covenant. I believe it was like episode 40, I want to say, but I don't even know what we were talking about. I think we were talking about Flesh and Blood, but he was like, I've been thinking about lines like all day. And that's what we mean. Like when a card game player says they're thinking about lines, this is what we're talking about. Turn 1, I do this. Turn 2, I do this. Turn 3, I do this.
Yeah.
That's what we mean when we say talking about lines, like thinking about all of these lines of play, like way ahead of time. So when you get into that situation, okay, here's what I'm going to do. Like, here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I'm going to do.
Which, going into gold fishing, which is a thing.
Yes.
Some people call it proxy hands. I used to call it that because
the first time I heard this term, I'm like, what in the world is this?
So it's just like you shuffle up your cards, you put it out there, you draw your cards, you draw your 7 hand, you figure out if you're mulliganing or not. And you pretty much just play not so much against yourself, right? But you're getting used to you're getting the repetition down of what your lines are, essentially. It's like, okay, land, going to Grazer. But like we were just talking about, well, maybe land into Amulet. And then like you start trying different things.
This is awkward because I have the microphone right in front of my face. Yeah. So I'm trying to shuffle my Pokemon deck here. But I had this deck like just off.
Yeah. Camera. So then like, you can also do it in other games, especially Pokemon, because you're not really like playing against an opponent.
Right.
You're just like, how fast can I do this? What are the proper plays for me to be doing in order to get to these specific moments inside the card game? Right. For Pokemon, it's like, okay, if I'm going first, why do you want to go first? If I'm going first, I need to make it sure to where in 2 turns, I have my pretty much fully evolved Pokemon along with the proper amount of energies that you need on top of it as well. So you want to make it as fast as humanly possible inside the deck.
It's pretty good.
Looks good.
Not terrible.
All right, it's not terrible.
No resources, but that's all right.
So
I have multiple basic Pokemon.
So in
with
gold
an
fishing,
this is a good hand.
So
Perfect.
in goldfish or with gold fishing, you're just essentially playing against yourself, you could say.
Yeah.
Or you're just seeing what you can do with the cards that were given to you at that moment.
So if you're listening, I've got my Pokemon deck off camera, pulled it out, started shuffling it. I drew a hand of 7 cards.
No, this is only 59.
Yeah, because I've got one card off to the side. Which, sorry, I don't want that card in my opening hand.
Yeah,
anyway.
I know you don't.
So I drew a hand of 7 cards, and I'm like, all right. So if I drew this hand,
why wouldn't you want that card in your opening hand? If you have like Ultra Ball, you pitch that thing.
Yeah, depend. Yeah, that's true. You're not wrong.
Or
You're
even
wrong.
like
right, because this card,
Professor's Research.
Because this Professor's Research is shuffle it back into your deck.
Oh.
Professor's, yeah. I don't run the one.
Sycamore.
Yeah, I don't run Sycamore.
I thought those ones were discard
maybe
draw
2,
7.
Maybe 2. Not Professor Oak's theory.
No, I'm not talking. I'm saying Professor's Research, which I think is
Professor Juniper is discard your hand and draw 7. Which I do.
So same thing with Sycamore, and then they later turned it into Professor's Research, which is that effect.
Right. Which I don't. I run Professor Oak's new theory, not research.
Yeah.
I don't think I run
So
research.
yeah, Juniper, Sycamore,
effect.
same thing.
Yeah, it's the same effect. Yeah. Yeah.
That card's amazing in opening hand.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. It is. So like I've got 1, 2, 4 basic Pokemon.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and then Jirachi.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm going second, yeah, that's a pretty good one to have.
Mm.
So yeah, this is a pretty good opening hand. So I'd figure out how I get everything set up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There's a basic, there's my starting Pokemon. I've got these ones on the bench, and then I've got these here chilling in hand. Then I probably play this.
Mm-hmm.
It's doing this just like over and over and over just to figure out like, okay, with this deck, I've drawn, here's what some of these opening hands are going to look like. So goldfishing is huge. Goldfishing is super, super beneficial.
Which if you're playing a control list, it's a little bit harder to do that because again, you're not more so playing your deck, you're playing your opponent's deck.
Because you're not playing proactively.
Yeah, pretty much.
Those decks, like control decks, are reactive in nature.
The only control deck that I can think of that tends to be proactive, that's not banned. So I was going to say Splinter Twins eventually turns proactive in order to win.
That's true.
Would be Jeskai control because they're playing Lightning Bolt. Okay. And they're also playing Lightning Helix as well. So Lightning they can take, Helix. So, oh my God, Lightning Helix. So they're playing these burn spells to slowly take down your opponent. Yeah. And then they also have the Snapcaster Mage to then bring those back as well.
Yeah. So, like there's so much, obviously you know this, but there's so much thinking that goes into all of this, right? Yeah. It is so much more than I'm going to pick a deck, I'm going to buy the cards, and I'm going to sit down and play.
So much research.
And you can do that, but you're probably not going to do very well.
Yeah.
Like fortune favors the prepared, not the bold. Fortune favors the prepared. Being like it's bold enough that you're entering a tournament, right? But it's way more than just entering it. You really do have to prepare, and that's where. Again, these sites, YouTube is such a big resource. Yeah. Such a big resource.
If you have a new deck that you're trying to learn for a tournament, someone out there plays it on MTGO, most likely.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, well, now go watch them play 5 rounds with your deck, see how they do, see what problem decks that were out there for them, and see how you could make the deck better as well.
Yeah. So honestly, like if you don't like Magic, but if you're a card game player and you are like, Magic's really not for me, to be honest, I'd encourage you to get into it just from the standpoint of learn the game, learn the rules, like learn a format, and then just follow it, right? For me, what I've really found is Magic helps inform all of these other card games that we play. It's so much. And
all except for Yu-Gi-Oh, honestly.
To be honest, like all of these other games, they were, you know what? I hate to break it to you, but they were built on the back of Magic. so many, like I think about Justin Gary, right? So Justin Gary's a designer. He designed Ascension with Brian Kibler, I believe, helped him. But he's also on a new game called Soulforge Fusion, which is super interesting, and we kind of want to get into. Was on Kickstarter a few months ago. Not sure when it comes to retail, but it's relatively soon, I think. But big Magic player. When we talked about net decking that episode, there was that article that we referenced. There was he was mentioned in there, and at the time of the what was it, the dojo, he was he was a younger kid, but a lot of these designers in the card game space have roots in Magic. If you've played Star Realms and Hero Realms, Brad Dotery and Darwin Castle, yeah, they're Magic players. Brian Kibler helped design Ascension, and I think a couple other games
Hall of Famer Magic players.
Exactly. Yes. If you've played, oh shoot, what's that one? Eternal, Louis Scott Vargas, LSV, still a Hall of Fame Magic player.
Yeah.
Right, he's in Hall of Fame, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. There's so many people in the card game space play Magic, right? And like honestly, I'm never going to tell somebody you need to, and you don't need to, but honestly, I would highly suggest you do.
Even aside from other card games, right? You look at board games. How many board games do you play that you have to manage a resource?
Every single one of them.
Oh, a bunch. How many board games is it to where like you kind of have to know what your opponent is going to do and work around it?
None of them.
Not a single one out there.
Not like every one of them.
Yeah. Especially if you're into strategy board games, right?
Right.
You don't got to do that at all.
But a lot of these designers, like they'll even say, yeah, we got a lot of this from Magic, like the things that we learned while playing Magic. There's a thing to going first. There is a thing to being the first to market, right? If you're the first to market, everyone is learning from you, good and bad.
Yeah.
Good and bad. And honestly, with Magic, there's a lot of both. There's a lot of good and there's a lot of bad.
Yeah.
And you get on the internet, you'll hear about both. Like in today's day and age, you'll probably hear more about the negative than you will the positive. But I mean, that's just the nature of, society and culture and where we are now.
Yep.
But I really encourage you, like, and honestly, to be quite honest with you, we talked about this, I think, in the net decking episode. I think the comprehensive rules, it's like 200 and how many pages?
So much.
There's a specific card interaction with Amulet Titan, a Dryad of the Ilsean Grove, and one other card. It's called Dress Down. Okay, it's an enchantment with flash, and basically says creatures lose all abilities. Okay, so the enchantment states creatures lose all abilities. Dryad of the Ilsean Grove states lands you control are every basic land type in addition to their other types. Okay, so it turns your forests into a mountain and island of everything else.
Yeah.
But the big thing for Amulet Titan is it turns it into a mountain, right? For Valakut. That's the big thing, right?
Yeah.
So you would think that if you have Dryad of the Ilsean Grove out, and then your opponent plays Dress Down, which says creatures lose all abilities, you would think that Dryad would lose that ability where it turns all of your lands into all the other basic lands.
Yeah.
Don't work like that.
Now, does it work like that if they had if they are casting the Dryad, flash out the Dress Down, and when it enters, it doesn't even have that ability at all to activate?
No.
Huh.
Because of there's a rule. It's basically layers. There's like how the layers work. Because of where the layer for granting your lands, these other types, that's like layer 4. Okay. And because it treats the card, you have to look at the object you're referencing. And in this reference, we're talking about a card, right? A Dryad, where it gives your lands these other types, that's layer 4. Okay. Where you lose, where Dress Down comes into play, and there's another one like Ichthyomorphous, I think, where it says other cards lose abilities, that's layer 6.
Yeah.
So layer 4 happens before layer 6. So
Right.
since layer 4 happens first, you still get that effect from Dryad. But what you do lose from Dryad is the ability to play another land.
Right, right.
So that one, because that's like layer 8.
That is also really
That's
big.
layer 8, I think. So you do get the first thing. You lose the second thing because of the thing from Dress Down. It's complicated. But, you know, like we said in Modern, there's a card for that. You know, another thing that you can say about Magic, there's a rule for that.
There's a rule
There
for that.
really is. And there should be.
Yeah.
There should be. Like
Yeah.
when you're talking about a strategic card game,
This game's been out for how long, Dan?
almost 30 years, Jim. 28 right now, I think.
28 years.
28 years.
Yeah.
But like there was something where I saw where it said the game needs to function the same if it's played in Japan, Brazil, China, or the United States. The outcome needs to be the same for each interaction everywhere. Okay. So there's no room for, well, this is how we play it at my house. Again, you in that situation, you can play it like that for sure. But in a tournament setting where rules matter, they have to come out, they have to function the same way for everybody.
So I don't know if you
That's
know
where
this.
I like Magic too.
In Yu-Gi-Oh, right, there's a ban list, but the ban list is different in the US than it is in Japan.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So there's no international tournaments?
Oh, no, there are. There's a world championship that happens every single year,
Really?
and they come up with a new ban list
No.
for it.
Really?
It's nuts, man.
That's crazy.
So all the cards that you would have been like super used to the previous week at a locals, whatever, you now go into the tournament and it can be completely banned.
Really?
Yeah, going into a world's tournament. And then when you come back from the world's tournament, you can start using them again.
That's crazy.
It's like they combine both of the ban lists together, and then they throw more cards on top of it.
That's crazy.
Just to change up the format
That's
for
crazy.
Worlds. Yeah,
That's
it's
crazy.
nuts.
That's crazy. So, all right. Well, those are our tips. And so, yeah, if you just keep following us, like we're going to be prepping for these. So the tournament, the local tournament that we're talking about happens the end of May. I believe it's the end of May. For that tournament, that's $1,000 prize pool tournament.
The 25th?
I think it's I think it is the 25th. Okay. I believe it's the 25th. So that's $1,000 prize pool tournament. And then there's another tournament that is in middle or to late July. And I believe that's a $20,000 prize pool tournament. So when I saw, because I think today I'm looking up just local tournaments, because I'm like, you know what? I've got a deck, and this is a pretty good deck, and I want to really learn it. Why not? Why not go to a tournament? Because honestly, it can only help. Like it can only help me as a player just get better, right? So like, yeah. So that was kind of what spurred on today's topic. So yeah, keep following us. We're going to be kind of prepping on some streams. Like I said, if you caught us last stream, we'll probably do it for a couple other streams as well. Just kind of work that in, just help us to get some more game time and then proxy up some other lists, try to get it. So, yeah, Jim, where can people find you? Oh, wait a minute. I'm forgetting a pretty big thing here.
Uh-oh.
What were we forgetting?
Card of the week.
Card of the week. It's a good one.
Because it's a weak card.
So we talk about knowing your play style, right? And so when I was trying to build some Pokemon decks, this is another deck that I have been wanting to build for a long time. And this is a legacy deck.
Dan handed me a bunch of cards. He's like, put this deck together. I'm like, all right. I put like 56 of the cards together or something
the majority
like that.
of them, yeah.
I'm like, all right, here you go. This is what you're missing.
Yep. So I figured out what I was missing. And so this is a great card. All right. So this is a Pokemon, right? This is Execute. So Execute is a basic Pokemon. This is from Plasma Freeze. I believe this is from Plasma Freeze.
Okay.
I'll pull it up just to be certain here in a minute. But so Execute, grass type Pokemon, 30 HP. The only thing I care about with this card is its ability. Yeah. So the ability is Propagation, which states, once during your turn before you attack, if this Pokemon is in your discard pile, you may put this Pokemon into your hand. Yeah.
Yep.
So we talk about graveyard strategies. That was like how I first kind of got into Commander, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was Muldrotha. 2 weeks ago we talked about Muldrotha, right? And how it was my first deck, and I thought it was so amazing that you could just utilize your graveyard as an extra hand. I don't even know how I found out about this deck. Really, I think what had happened was I think I just Googled again the power of the internet. Internet is just so amazing. Like I just look at like popular Pokemon decks, and then I came across this list. Okay, it's called Weavile Eggs. So it uses the executes as discard fodder. There's a lot of cards. Okay, the biggest two being Weavile, and then the other is Junk Arm. Junk Arm is the other big one. So, Jim, can you tell the people, like, discarding is a big thing in Pokemon.
Huge, because you're also just getting a whole lot of cards from your other cards.
Yeah, because there's a lot of the cards state like on level balls, a lot of the Pokeballs.
Ultra Ball, the Junk Arm, the Professor's Research, or Sycamore.
Part of the cost of a lot of these cards is discarding a card. Okay, to find something else from your deck. Computer Search is another one. Discard 2 cards, I believe, to find any card. Computer Search is great. I'm pretty sure it's discard. Pretty sure it is discard 2.
Is that the
Tutor anything?
I was thinking of Computer Research, which is reveal a Pokemon, put it into deck, take out a different Pokemon. But is that the one you're talking about, the one of in your list?
Yeah, the one of, yeah.
Okay, then yeah, that one's get anything.
Yeah, Computer Search. Yep.
Yeah, Computer Search, and there's also Computer Research.
Computer Research, yeah. Right. So, Computer Search. It's discard 2, find any one card in your deck.
Ace Spec.
Yeah, Ace Spec. Great card. But another big one is Junk Arm, where discard 2 cards from your hand, search your discard for a trainer card, show it to your opponent, and put it into your hand. You can't get a Junk Arm with Junk Arm itself.
And same thing with Ultra Ball. Discard 2 cards, go search through your deck for a Pokemon, put it right in the hand.
Yep. So when you need stuff to discard, that's why you have executes. Discard the execute, return execute to your hand, right? To use it for other discard effects. So where you want execute in your discard pile. So the quicker you get your executes to your discard pile, the better you are for the rest of the game. Okay. So now the deck needs a finisher. So the finisher for this is Weavile. So Weavile's big effect is Vilify. So Vilify, discard as many Pokemon specifically, as you like from your hand. This attack does 30 damage times the number of Pokemon you discarded. So if you discard 4 executes from your hand, that's 120 damage, which KOs a lot of Pokemon in Legacy, in particular, right? So yeah, that one shot's a lot of Pokemon.
And so two hit KOs are also really big in Pokemon as well. And the fact that you can do that to a bunch of the Pokemon, and even if you put it to 150, right? So now if you're talking about 300, you're killing nearly everything in Pokemon in 2 shots.
Yep. So the downside to Weavile is the 90 HP, but just the value from execute is what drove me to this card. Like, even to be honest, even if it's not that good, I love the fact that I take this card, pitch it to something. Okay, I'm gonna return it because of its ability. Junk Arm, I'm gonna pitch it again and then get it back. You can only do it once per turn, but still, like the fact that I'm able to every single turn discard it to something and then get it back, I just thought that was the coolest thing. So this in particular just goes back to me playing what I love and enjoy, and like reminding me how much fun I'm having playing this game. Like I think it's so cool. Like the fact that you can do this thing with this card. So execute is an amazing card, and this is the execute you play. Like, this is the only execute. So to be honest, I don't know the Pokemon formats that well, but I'm not sure what other versions of execute are played in other formats.
But the only thing I can think of is they have an Alolan Exeggutor.
Yeah.
Which if he's a stage 1 Pokemon, then you would play the previous execute, and then you would then evolve on top of him.
Yeah, I'm trying to see it.
Which
here.
most of the
Is
time,
it the GX one?
So if it's a GX, yeah, it could be a
Is that-
basic.
Okay, I just didn't know which one you were referencing.
Yeah, it's probably a GX. But I don't know. I don't know if some GXs are stage 1 and 2 or if they're just basics. I don't know.
This one is a stage 1.
Okay, so then it would work for this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then you'd play whatever execute that is in standard format or whatever format it is, and then play the Alolan Executor on top of it.
Yeah, right. So, yeah. Yeah, so execute I thought was the coolest thing. So I'm like, all right, man, I got to build this deck. And the funny thing is about this deck, we talk about resources. There's like 7 resources in the whole deck. Yeah. 7 energies in the whole deck. And so many of the deck is finding your cards or drawing cards.
Draw 7 cards.
Draw
from
7.
1 card.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So Pokemon Legacy is a pretty cool format. We talk about fair Magic. Like Pokemon Legacy is probably would you say it's the most fair of the formats or no?
No.
I don't even know what would be considered fair in Pokemon.
Honestly, there is no fair in Pokemon.
No, there is in Pokemon TCGO, the theme decks.
The theme decks, yeah. That's the most fair.
That's the most fair you're going to get.
But even at that, there's like some decks are just better than others.
Yeah,
by
no,
a
for
lot.
sure. Yeah. But yeah, that's probably the most fair you're going to get. So,
decks.
yeah. So that is card of the week. I think, is that 6? I don't even know what number we're on anymore, to be honest, but that's card of the week for this week. Execute. If you've never played Pokemon, check it out. It's fun. It is a lot of fun. Honestly, Pokemon is probably the game if you got younger kids and you want to get them into card games, trading cards, collectible card games. Pokemon is a great place to start.
For sure.
Great place to start. There's so much history and lore now around the game. It's a super great game to get kids into, and it's a really easy thing to get your kids into as well. So honestly, I'm looking forward to when my kids are older, getting them into Pokemon. I'm looking forward to that, to be honest with you. I think it's just, for me, it's waiting till they're at the age where they can really understand it.
Right.
And I know that's going to be a while, and that's okay. And if they don't like it, they don't like it. It is what it is. But
too bad.
Yeah, you're playing it, okay? Anyway, so all right. Well, that was that. Wow, dude. This episode literally flew by.
I know, right?
I did not expect. I'm not surprised, to be honest. I did not expect to be talking about this for an hour and a half. But like I said, I'm not surprised.
I remember looking at the timer. It was like 15 minutes. I look back 57. I'm like, what?
Yeah. Woo, man. We know how to pick them, right?
Right.
So, all right, Jim, where can people find you on the internet?
Yeah, you guys can find me on Twitter, Twitch, Instagram at Jim Morgan HNH.
You guys can find me on Twitter at _DG Campbell and on Instagram at Daniel.G.Campbell. And like I said, head over to our website, www.hobbiesandhappiness.com. Find links to all of our socials there, as well as our podcast. And pretty much everything's there on our website. Check out our YouTube as well. So thanks everybody for being here. And who knows, Jim, maybe by next week, Elon Musk will own Twitter. Who knows?
I hope so.
It's a pretty crazy world out there.
I hope he pumps up Bitcoin as well.
Yeah, right?
That'd be great.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, thanks everybody for being here, and we'll catch you in the next episode. See you, everybody.
Take care.